All right, what we're now going to do, we're going to begin the build portion of the first experiment, which is the experiment involving the calibration of your temperature sensors. So what we're going to do, we're going to get our laboratory kit and we're going to pull out our temperature sensors beginning with the HTC2. We'll be using this one. We'll need the 4 DS1 sensors, so let's pull those out. And then we're going to need some more materials from the smaller box that is within our kit. So let's open that up. And what we'll be pulling out of here, to begin with, we need the little Ziploc bag. And from there, we don't need the washers, but we'll need the label, as well as the 2 little grippy things that will enable us to put our pipes together and take them apart. We'll need some of the PVC pipe fittings. So the ones that we're going to want to pull out are going to be the T connectors. We need both of those. We'll need the end caps. So pull out the 2 end caps. We will need the 3/4 to 1/2 inch transition piece. We'll need the 2 90-degree elbows. And then the remainder is going to be components of the clear PVC piping. So pull out all 4 of the 2-inch pieces of clear PVC piping. Pull out the 2 pieces that are each 3 inches in length. So those 2. And then finally, what we're going to need is the 6-inch piece with the 5 holes drilled in it. So those are all of the components that we will need for the calibration experiment. So we can put the remainder of the materials back into the box and put it off to the side. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to need to do here, I'm going to move the PVC piping off to the side so it doesn't get in the way. What we need to do is we need to unpack the temperature sensors, and if they do not have labels already installed, we need to install the labels onto the temperature sensors. So, and if you could keep the boxes for the temperature sensors, that would be the best. You don't really need to keep the plastic wrap or the instructions because they are quite intuitive to use, but do keep the box. The other thing that I'd like you to keep is the little rubber band that keeps the wires in order. And so then when you return the kit at the end of the semester, you'll be able to put the wires back into an orderly fashion and put them back into the boxes. So I'm going to put each of those into the box now. And what you should do is check. Some of the kits will have batteries in them, others will not. It depends on whether or not the kits were mailed international. And if they're mailed international, I had to pull the batteries out. Or it may be that from a previous semester the students took the batteries out, because we'll ask you to do that at the conclusion of the semester so that we don't get corrosion. So anyways, just make sure that the batteries are in there. A few things to note about the temperature sensors is there is a mode. Well, first of all, you can flip them from degrees C or Fahrenheit. So put them all onto degrees C because we're going to want our measurements in degrees Celsius, not Fahrenheit. So they're all converted, and then there's a mode button on this, and what you can do, the mode button toggles between the clock, time, internal temperature. So there's an internal temperature sensor in the DS1, just like there is with the HTC2s, and there's the out or external temperature sensor. Make sure that they're all on out, because that will then mean that we're monitoring the temperature of the little 4mm NTC probe, and that's what we're going to be doing the calibration with. So they should all be set to out. So I'm going to do that now. Okay. Now the next thing that we need to do, oh, you know what I should do? I should open up the HTC2 as well. And we don't need the plastic bag to come back, but it would be nice if it came back with this case just so that everything is neat and orderly. Do keep the little twist tie that comes here, and then make sure that your cable is wrapped up neatly as it arrived, and that way when we get the kits back, things are organized. And with this one, there is a battery that is supplied, and there's a little bit of plastic wrap on that, so we'll have to take that off. And with these, what we can do, you just slide the base open here. Make sure you place the battery in with the right polarity, and so if you look, it shows, well, usually what it is the negative goes on the spring side. I don't even know if I can see the polarity here. I don't think I can. But the negative terminal goes onto the spring side, and you push the battery in that way. Flip it over, and let's see, it's beeping, and that means that it must be working. You pull this little film off. You don't need the film for the experiment. You can throw that away. And then we put this case back on. Do keep, like I said, the plastic case, however, and the twist tie. We'll want you to keep that, and keep the boxes for the DS1s. So once we've done that, it's pretty intuitive. If you want to set the clock, you probably should set the clock on these. And it's one of those where you just hold down, and then you can change the minutes. So that's like 12:02. And then you push it again and you can change the hour. So you're going to want to set the clock because that's how you're going to monitor your experiments as you're conducting them. But what we want to do now is we want to put labels on the temperature sensors. So we have T1, T2, T3, T4, and that will be all of the DS1s. They will be labeled T1, T2, T3, T4, and then the HTC2 will be labeled T5. So I'm going to go about and do that now. Now when you're doing this, what you need to do is you need to get a pair of scissors, which I should have right down here. And you want to carefully cut your labels. So I put the boxes there for you to see where you can cut it. So I'm just doing that now. So that's T5. That will go on to the HTC2. I got a little bit of static cling here with these. You might have to lick your finger in order to move them because of the static electricity. And then I'll cut out the other ones. So let's go ahead and do that, and we'll put labels on all of our temperature sensors. Okay, so there I've cut the labels, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to take T1, and in order to get the adhesive back, what you need to do is go on the back side of the little label, and if you bend it, you'll see that there's an adhesive strip underneath another piece of paper, and you got to kind of peel that with your fingernails. So there we have T1. I've been able to pull off the components, and what we'll want to do is just put the label right above the power button or the power indicator, and try to make it straight. Doesn't need to be perfect, but straight is good. So continue doing that with T2, T3, T4 for the DS1s, so we'll do that now. Okay, so there we have the DS1s labeled, T1 through T4, and the last one that we need to label is the HTC2, and take your T5 label to do that. Okay, so that is the labels. Sometimes those little adhesives can drive you a little crazy, and it helps if you have a fingernail that you can get behind. But you got to split it and kind of see it pop open, and then you can pull it off. So what we've done, we've labeled the DS1s as T1, T2, T3, T4. And then we put T5 on the HTC2. So those are the temperature sensors. I can push those off to the side now. And what we're now going to do is we're going to build the calibration system, or the apparatus, and that's what we'll be using for when we calibrate these sensors. So the place to begin is to take your 6-inch PVC pipe and put it into the middle of one of the T connectors, and then put the other side on the other end. And when you do that, the holes that are drilled in the 6-inch PVC pipe should be upward, oriented upward. And then what you do is you take your 2-inch PVC pipe, and you push them into the ends of each of the T connectors, so the other two ends. So we've done that. And then what we do is, on equal and opposite ends of our little structure that we've just built here, we put a right degree elbow like this. So we have one elbow and another, and the elbow should be going up vertically. So we have that structure. On the other ends that are open, we put the caps in order to seal the system. So we get a structure that now looks like this, and you can push down on it to make sure that everything is flat and aligned. And you want to push these fittings in because you don't want them to leak when you're doing your test. And to take them apart, this is where you will be using the little grippy strips, and that will be very beneficial for taking it apart. Okay, so what we have now is we have a structure that looks something like this. And what we now need to do is we put the 3-inch risers in here in the two 90-degree elbows that are sticking up. And with one of them, what we'll do is we'll put our 3/4 to 1/2-inch adapter. And that is going to be where we're going to pour either hot water or cold water for the calibration. Obviously, we will not be able to get to a higher position than here, but it just makes it a little bit easier. It's almost like a funnel is essentially how it's acting. Okay, so that is the apparatus for the calibration. The next step that we need to do is we need to put in the temperature sensors. And for this, you're going to need to be a little bit careful because the NTC sensors themselves will be inserted into each of the holes that we have in our 6-inch PVC pipe. Now the thing about these holes is that they had to be drilled in a manner that enabled the sensor to go in, but not to be too loose, but not to be too tight. And so what you'll find is some of the pipes that you're going to receive, the hole might be a little bit on the large and loose side, in which case you're going to get a little bit of leakage, or it's going to be tight. And if it's tight, what you're going to want to do is take the little black strip, put it around your NTC sensor like this, and that is how you'll insert it. And you don't need to insert it all the way. It only has to go in about halfway, just so that the sensor part is immersed in the liquid when we perform the calibration. So I'm going to begin with T1, and I'll put it into the first hole. And that was an easy one. So that one was drilled with a sufficient diameter to make it easy. I'll now take the second one, and again, I'll take my little black strip. I'll put it around the NTC sensor. I push it into the second hole. That one was a little bit tighter, but you can see as I'm doing this that I'm not pushing the NTC sensors all the way in. There's still a portion of the NTC sensor that is sticking out of the pipe, and that should be fine in order to give you enough for the calibration. The reason why you don't want to push it all the way in is then it makes it really hard to pull them out, because all you're then doing is pulling on the wire, and that will damage the sensor, and so we don't want to do that. So you want to have a little bit of the silver, probably, I don't know, that's probably about 5 millimeters exposed out of the pipe, enabling to make it easier for you to remove. So I'm now going to take T3, and it doesn't really matter what order you put your temperature sensors in. That one, I'm not using the grippy strip to put in, I'm just using my fingers, and it went in fine. The next one we'll put in is T4. And that one went in very easy. And then the final one is going to be the one with the clock. And I probably should set the clock. Let's see, it's 1:20 right now. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go mode. I'm going to adjust it up to 20. I'll push mode again. And then it gives me the hour. So 1:20 mode, now 12-hour. I'll do it a 12-hour clock. 2016, I'll adjust the year. Do we need to do, today's October the 1st. Not that you really need that, but anyways. Okay, so 1:20 p.m., 45% relative humidity, and it's 16 degrees right now, so it's a little bit on the chilly side. Okay, and then the last thing that we do, we can put in the sensor from the HTC2, which is labeled as temperature sensor 5. And we put that in the last remaining hole that we have in our calibration tube. And that one was a little bit tighter. And this one I can push all the way in because this sensor, if you look at it, it's a little bit longer than the other ones. And so when it goes in the pipe, a little bit of it will still protrude, even if it hits the bottom of the pipe, of the internal diameter of the pipe. So that is what our system looks like. We have the 5 sensors put in, and what we'll do when we perform the calibration, we'll want to have T1, actually I said don't, it doesn't matter the order, it probably does. You'll want to have T1, T2, T3, and these things have a mind of their own. They kind of go wobbling around. Let's see. Okay, so this one was T3, was the third one that I put in, which is right here. And then T4, and the final temperature sensor that we're going to want is to have this one, and this has a nice little fold out on the back that enables you to align it. But by taping or videoing the HTC2, that's how we know how long this experiment is going to take. So now that we've completed the build part of the experimental apparatus to perform the calibration with our 5 temperature sensors, we're now at a point where we can take this to the kitchen. And what I'll be doing is putting it onto a table, and what we'll do is we'll perform 2 separate calibration experiments. The first one will involve taking water and placing it into a kettle and bringing it to a boil, and we'll use about 2/3 of the kettle filled with boiling water, and then we'll add cold water to that, and the net result is we'll have water at a temperature between 60 and 70 degrees C. And what we'll do with that is we'll pour it into our little funnel here in our apparatus, and we'll fill it so that it comes up close to the top of the riser, and then we'll have water at around 65, 70 degrees C that the sensors are exposed to, and we'll let it cool. And so what we'll be doing is we'll have a camera set up, and you'll have a cell phone camera, for example, and you'll do time-lapse photography, and you'll be monitoring the time on the HTC2, and what you'll be doing is reading the temperature measurements every minute. And that's why it's a good idea to keep the temperature sensors in order in the way that they're placed inside of the calibration apparatus, and that'll make it easier when you read temperature 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, and that will become one of the rows in your spreadsheet. And then you'll go to the next minute and you'll do it again and again and again. And what we'll do is we'll let the water cool to room temperature. And after we perform that part of the experiment, then we'll empty out the calibration unit and we'll repeat the experiment, but this time we'll use cold water. And so for that, you should take maybe a 500 ml pop bottle, something like that, fill it with water, put it in the fridge overnight, and then about 15 minutes before you conduct the experiment, put it into the freezer. So little ice crystals will form in it, and that will drop it down closer to 0 degrees Celsius. You'll then take it out, shake it up, and you'll then pour it into your empty calibration apparatus, and then the sensors will be exposed to a temperature close to 0, and then the system will warm to room temperature. And by doing that, what we're doing is we're exposing the sensors to temperatures that range all the way from close to 0 degrees C up to about 65 degrees C. And then that will cover pretty much the entire range of temperatures that we will see for the remainder of the experiments that we'll be conducting in the course. So that's what we're going to do now, and that will be the experimental phase of experiment number 1. Thank you.